Imagine a state thrown into chaos. A beloved leader, someone who truly fought for the people, assassinated right in her own home. Her husband, murdered right beside her. And if that wasn't enough, another political family ambushed, fighting for their very lives. This isn't some plot from a political thriller you'd see on TV. This is the horrifying reality that's actually unfolding in Minnesota. Early on a Saturday morning, the simple safety of home was completely shattered by gunfire, and the shockwaves from that violence have shaken the state's political world to its core. There's a dangerous suspect out there, a chameleon who disguised himself as a police officer, a figure of authority. He's now the target of a massive, urgent manhunt. And the motive? It looks like a chilling, calculated attack on democracy itself, a targeted campaign against the people who serve. Minnesota is grieving, Minnesota is scared, and Minnesota is on edge, as law enforcement races against time to catch a killer who seems to have declared war on its leaders. Saturday, June 14, 2025. It was supposed to be just another peaceful morning for the folks in Brooklyn Park and Champlin, suburban towns near Minneapolis. But that peace was brutally, irrevocably broken by a series of savage events that would send shockwaves not just across Minnesota, but the entire nation. In Brooklyn Park, the home of Representative Melissa Hortman, a real pillar of the Democratic Farmer-Labor Party, former Speaker of the Minnesota House, and the current DFL leader, became a scene of absolute horror. Hortman, just 55, a woman everyone described as a shining light in Minnesota politics, known for her fierce advocacy and her amazing ability to bring people together, was silenced. She and her husband, Mark, 58, were found shot multiple times. Representative Hortman was pronounced dead right there at the scene. Her husband, tragically, died from his injuries at a nearby hospital. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner later confirmed the grim details: multiple gunshot wounds, a homicide. But the violence didn't start or end there. Just 5 miles away, in the neighboring city of Champlin, another prominent DFL figure, State Senator John Hoffman, 60, and his wife, Yvette, were also ambushed in their home. The couple suffered multiple gunshot wounds in a terrifying ordeal. Miraculously, they survived. Reports say Yvette Hoffman heroically shielded their daughter during the attack. Can you imagine that courage? Senator Hoffman and his wife were rushed to a hospital and underwent surgery. Their condition, while serious, was thankfully reported as stable, offering a tiny sliver of hope in all this darkness. According to their nephew, a bullet came terrifyingly close, narrowly missing Senator Hoffman's heart. The first calls to 911 painted a picture of sheer chaos and terror. Champlin police were the first to arrive, around 2 a.m., at the Hoffman residence. It was actually the quick thinking of a Brooklyn Park police sergeant, who, upon hearing about the attack on Senator Hoffman, that led officers to check on other lawmakers in their area. And around 3:35 a.m., as officers approached Representative Hortman's home, they saw something chilling: what looked like a police SUV with its emergency lights flashing. A person, dressed to look like a police officer in blue with black body armor, was at the door. This individual reportedly opened fire on the responding officers before taking off. The sheer audacity of these attacks, the fact that high-profile Democratic lawmakers were targeted, and the calculated impersonation of a police officer, it all immediately signaled this was no random act of violence. Governor Tim Walz, in a somber press conference, didn't pull any punches. He called the murder of Representative Hortman and her husband a politically motivated assassination. He confirmed the attacks were linked and that a massive manhunt was underway for a single suspect, now identified by authorities as 57-year-old Vance Luther Boelter. It turns out Boelter had ties to the funeral home industry and a contract that involved working with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's office. This connection might have given him some familiarity with police procedures and crime scenes. Some reports also suggested he might have previously worked for a security company and had even crossed paths with Senator Hoffman at public meetings. A shelter-in-place order was quickly issued for a 3-mile radius around Edinburgh Golf Course in Brooklyn Park as the search intensified. Though it was later lifted, the fear definitely lingered. Law enforcement found the suspect's abandoned vehicle, which looked like a fake police SUV. Inside, they made a chilling discovery: a manifesto or some kind of list containing the names of other lawmakers, including those who supported abortion rights. Flyers with the words "No Kings" were also found, hinting at a possible anti-government or extremist ideology. The state, and indeed the whole country, was now facing a nightmare: a politically motivated killer, armed and dangerous, who had meticulously planned his attacks and was still out there. The shocking way these attacks were carried out, especially the assassin's police disguise, immediately kicked off one of the most intense manhunts Minnesota has seen in a long time. The sheer scale of the operation is huge, which tells you just how serious the threat is. Leading the charge is the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, but they're definitely not alone. Federal agencies like the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals Service have all jumped in, throwing their considerable resources into finding Vance Boelter. The FBI quickly put up a $50,000 reward for any information that leads to his arrest and conviction. Hundreds of officers from local police departments and sheriff's offices across the region are involved, a massive force dedicated to bringing this suspect to justice. So who is Vance Boelter? He's described as a white male, 57 years old, about 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing around 220 pounds, with brown or graying hair and brown eyes. When he was last spotted on surveillance footage from a Minneapolis business, he was reportedly wearing a light-colored cowboy hat and a dark, long-sleeved collared shirt, a big change from the police getup he used during the attacks. Authorities have been really clear. Boelter should be considered armed and extremely dangerous. They're urging the public not to approach him, but to call 911 immediately with any sightings or information. The discovery of several AK-style firearms in his vehicle really drove that warning home. They believe he's still armed with a pistol. The investigation is hitting on all cylinders. Forensic teams are painstakingly going over the crime scenes at the Hortman place in Brooklyn Park and the Hoffman home in Champlin. They're looking for any tiny trace of evidence, fingerprints, DNA, ballistics, that could give them more links or clues about the killer's movements and methods. The suspect's abandoned vehicle, with all its disturbing contents, is a crucial piece of the puzzle. It could offer insights into his mindset, his planning, and maybe even who he was targeting next. That list of lawmakers found in the vehicle has prompted authorities to issue urgent warnings to other legislators and public officials, especially those in the metro area, telling them to take extra safety precautions. Some officials have reportedly even been given security details. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey announced that extra police resources were assigned to check on the safety of public officials who might be at risk. You can't overestimate the psychological toll of these events on the community and on public servants. Impersonating a police officer is a particularly nasty tactic. It's designed to exploit trust and get access. It really hits at the heart of community confidence in law enforcement and creates this cloud of suspicion and fear. Authorities have even advised residents to be cautious, saying that for the time being, any official police visits would likely be made by officers in pairs. While the manhunt rages on, the state is also dealing with an enormous sense of loss and grief, especially for Representative Melissa Hortman. She wasn't just a name in a news report. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother of two, a friend, a mentor, and a dedicated public servant who had given 2 decades of her life to the people of Minnesota. Elected to the Minnesota House in 2004, Hortman worked her way up, serving as House Speaker from 2019 to early 2025, and was the DFL leader when she died. Her colleagues, from both sides of the political aisle, have expressed deep shock and sorrow. Governor Walz, a close friend, called her a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota, adding, "Our state lost a great leader, and I lost the dearest of friends." House Speaker Lisa DeMuth, a Republican, remembered Hortman as someone respected by everyone at the Capitol as a formidable advocate for her values and her caucus, noting that few legislators have had as large an impact on the state of Minnesota. Hortman was a real driving force behind a wave of progressive legislation, especially after the DFL gained full control of the state government in 2022. She championed landmark laws that codified abortion rights, the PRO Act, and made Minnesota a trans refuge state by protecting gender-affirming care and banning conversion therapy for minors. Her fingerprints are all over initiatives that established paid family and medical leave, paid sick leave, and safe leave for survivors of domestic violence. She fought for major investments in child care, early childhood education, and programs to tackle child poverty and hunger. Under her leadership, Minnesota moved to provide free school meals for all students and tuition-free public college for families earning under $80,000 a year. She was also a recognized leader in clean energy initiatives and environmental policy. She once said the paid family and medical leave program was the most rewarding piece of legislation she passed, stating, "People shouldn't have to choose between a job and recovering from illness." This attack has been flat-out condemned as an assault on democracy itself. U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who actually campaigned with Hortman in her first legislative race, stated, "Let me be absolutely clear. This was an act of targeted political violence, and it was an attack on everything we stand for as a democracy." Minnesota's entire congressional delegation issued a joint statement, saying, "There is no place in our democracy for politically motivated violence." This feeling has been echoed by political leaders all over the country, from governors to members of Congress, all expressing horror and calling for a rejection of political violence. California's legislative leaders from both parties even issued a rare joint statement urging everyone to take down the temperature, respect differences of opinion, and work toward peace in our society. Former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, whose own husband was a victim of a politically motivated attack, called the shootings a shocking and abhorrent manifestation of political violence in our country. The reality that a suspect meticulously planned and carried out these attacks, driven by what looks like a political vendetta, has cast a really dark shadow. That list of names found in Boelter's vehicle suggests a broader, more sinister plan, possibly targeting people for their policy stances, especially on divisive issues like abortion rights. This has sent a chill through the political establishment, forcing an unwelcome look at the rising tide of threats and violence against public officials. Those No Kings flyers hint at an anti-establishment rage, a dangerous undercurrent in our polarized society. While the Hoffmans are thankfully on the road to recovery, their ordeal, especially Yvette Hoffman's bravery in protecting her daughter, is a stark reminder of the human cost of such hatred. Senator Hoffman himself was known as a pragmatic lawmaker who worked across the aisle, someone dedicated to helping his constituents. The fact that he, too, was a target just underscores how indiscriminate politically charged violence can be once it crosses the line from words to action. The manhunt for Vance Boelter isn't just about catching a fugitive. It's about trying to get back a sense of security, about sending a clear message that acts like this won't be tolerated, and about protecting the very people who dedicate their lives to public service. Every hour that he remains free is an hour filled with anxiety and the potential for more harm. The resources being thrown at this reflect that urgency, a state and a nation holding its breath, praying for a swift and safe resolution. The search for Vance Boelter is active and ongoing. Law enforcement is really urging anyone with information, no matter how small it might seem, to come forward. If you've seen Vance Boelter or have any information about where he might be or what he's been doing, please call 911 immediately. Do not approach him. Your tip could be the key to preventing further tragedy. And if you find this coverage informative and want to stay updated on this and other important stories, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing these critical narratives to light. As the manhunt for Vance Boelter continues, Minnesota finds itself at a painful crossroads. The state is grappling with immediate political fallout and some deep, soul-searching questions about what the future holds. The assassination of Representative Melissa Hortman hasn't just robbed Minnesota of a cherished leader. It's also thrown the delicate balance of power in the Minnesota House of Representatives into complete disarray. With Hortman's tragic death, the House is now evenly split, 67-67 between the DFL and Republicans. This sudden tie introduces a huge amount of uncertainty and potential instability into the legislative process, and this is happening at a time when strong, unified leadership is needed more than ever. The void left by Hortman, who was such a skilled negotiator and consensus builder, will be incredibly tough to fill. This attack is a brutal example of a really disturbing trend: the rise of politically motivated violence and threats against public officials all across the United States. For years, law enforcement agencies have been warning about the increasing anger in political discussions and how it could push some individuals to violence. This incident in Minnesota is a horrific confirmation of those fears. It's a stark reminder that words can have dangerous consequences, and that demonizing political opponents can fuel a climate where violence becomes a perceived option for those who feel aggrieved or hold extremist views. Governor Walz put it well when he said, "Peaceful discourse is the foundation of our democracy. We don't settle our differences with violence or at gunpoint." Leaders from all political backgrounds have echoed this, calling for a de-escalation of rhetoric and a return to civility. The investigation into Vance Boelter's motives is still ongoing, but the evidence found so far, the list of lawmakers, the focus on abortion rights supporters, the No Kings items, all point towards a premeditated and ideologically driven campaign of terror. Understanding the full scope of his radicalization and his specific grievances will be crucial, not just for prosecuting this case, but also for helping to prevent similar tragedies down the road. His reported familiarity with police procedures and crime scenes, possibly picked up from his work, adds another complex layer to his profile, suggesting a degree of sophistication in his planning and how he carried out the attacks. The community's response has been one of shock, grief, and outrage. Vigils and memorials are being planned, offering a space for people to mourn together and reaffirm shared values. But underneath the sorrow, there's also a palpable current of fear. If elected leaders can be targeted in their own homes, then who is truly safe? This attack has shattered the sense of security that many Minnesotans took for granted, forcing an uncomfortable look at just how vulnerable an open society can be. Public events, including some planned No Kings protests that some feared might be linked, though authorities found no direct connection beyond the flyers in the suspect's car, were cautioned against by authorities until the suspect was caught, which really highlights how anxious everyone is. The courage of the Hoffman family, especially Yvette Hoffman's actions to protect her child, stands in such stark contrast to the cowardice of the attacker. Their survival and recovery will be a long road, both physically and emotionally, but their resilience offers a real beacon of hope. Senator Hoffman's reputation as a lawmaker who always sought common ground makes the attack on him all the more senseless. But Melissa Hortman's legacy won't be defined by her death. It'll be defined by her life's work. The progressive policies she championed, from reproductive rights and LGBTQ+ protections to investments in education, healthcare, and family support, have left a permanent mark on Minnesota. Her colleagues have vowed that her work will continue, that her vision for a more equitable and just Minnesota will endure. She was a leader who, in her own words after the 2022 election, recognized a simmering rage, but hoped voters would channel that energy into democratic participation. The tragic irony that she herself became a victim of that rage turned into violence is a truly bitter pill to swallow. As Minnesota and the nation watch this manhunt unfold, several key questions are still hanging in the air. How was Boelter able to plan and carry out these attacks with such precision? Did he have help, or was he acting alone? What, if any, warning signs were missed? And most importantly, how can society prevent these kinds of acts of political terrorism from happening again? The path forward for Minnesota will be challenging, no doubt about it. It's going to require not only bringing the perpetrator to justice, but also having a difficult conversation about political polarization, the responsibility that comes with rhetoric, and the measures needed to protect those who step up to serve their communities. It's going to require healing the deep wounds inflicted on the state's psyche and rebuilding trust. It will demand a renewed commitment to the democratic principles that Representative Hortman so fiercely defended. The tragic events in Minnesota are a somber wake-up call for the entire nation. Getting justice for Melissa Hortman, Mark Hortman, Senator John Hoffman, and Yvette Hoffman is absolutely paramount. The law enforcement agencies involved in this dangerous manhunt deserve our full support as they work to apprehend Vance Boelter. Again, if you have any information that could help catch him, please contact 911 immediately. Beyond this immediate crisis, this tragedy forces us all to take a hard look in the mirror. The health of a democracy isn't just measured by its laws and institutions, but by the tone of its public conversations and the safety of those who participate in it. When political differences escalate to violence, the very fabric of society is threatened. The memory of Melissa Hortman, a dedicated public servant, a wife, and a mother, should inspire a collective resolve to reject hatred, to condemn violence in all its forms, and to foster a political climate where debate is lively but respectful, and where serving one's community is honored, not targeted. The fight to preserve that ideal is a fight for the soul of Minnesota, and really, for the soul of America. Let's hope we can find the courage and wisdom to meet this challenge. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth reports. Your engagement helps us keep these important conversations going. Stay safe and stay informed.